Hello and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We're going towards the end of the year with a very fast pace. This is already the third out of 4 open mics this year. And I'm super thrilled to be back at the full pavilion today to talk about the GenAI effect in pharma. And I'm looking forward to a super interesting panel today. My name is Rael. I'm on behalf of Switzerland Innovation Park, Basel area, hosting this event series. And we're also hosting the health tech community on the Novartis campus at our site. This is an event we do together with DayOne, Healthcare Innovation. And I'm happy to introduce my colleague Ursula Costa, director of DayOne. But I just want to say one more word and also welcome to everyone who joined us online today. As usual, we will use Mentimeter. You will see a QR code on the screens or the link in the chat. And feel free to join the discussion, send in your questions and get involved in the discussion. But now over to you, Ursula.
Thank you so much and welcome everyone on site, online. So GenAI is a hot topic and we could see it from how fast this event filled out. So congrats to all of you who made it to get a seat here, and really sorry for many of you that are watching us online today, but I hope you get to enjoy the vibrant panel discussion that we are going to have. I'm the director at DayOne. We are a global health tech accelerator based here at the Novartis campus. And since 3 years now, our focus has been on data and AI at the interface with pharma. So we have been actively working on this field for a while. I'm more than excited to have together with us Accenture as our supporting partner that is gonna give us a nice keynote and introduction into the topic and a vibrant panel later on with the views from the 2 big ones here in the city, Roche and Novartis, with Tommy as well from Accenture, a bit more on the policy. And we hope that this is an engaging discussion and an engaging conversation where we get some insights on the hype, but also some of the challenges and the reality around GenAI for pharma. So without more ado, I'm very happy to introduce Petra Janser, Global Life Sciences Lead at Accenture. Petra, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody in the room, and hello to people online. It's great to see many familiar faces and also a lot of new faces. Thank you for having me here today. I'm sorry, I'm just recovering from a really bad cold, so in case my voice is fainting, you just let me know if it gets too scratchy or too low in volume. I wanted to, or I will take the opportunity to give you a little bit of an overview of how we, and that's Accenture, think about generative AI and various dimensions, which is a lot that has nothing to do with technology, to really get impact from generative AI. And I have to do some rapid firing, as always. I have a little bit too many slides, but it's more like throwing a few key topics to you, which then the very esteemed panel and people who have a much deeper understanding than myself, I'm a molecular biologist by education, I should say, have. And there's an opportunity then to go deeper. Panel will go deeper, and you have an opportunity to ask questions, of course. So if we, and I, being a scientist, think about, what do these intelligent technologies do? And the big headline is always generative AI, but there's more than just generative AI. There is AI, there's machine learning. There is, many other of these intelligent technologies. And the speech that I will give is, looking at these intelligent technologies, in a bundle and not generative AI only, because some of the numbers that we've tried to approximate, you will say, really, is that generative AI only? But it is actually a whole set of intelligent technologies. But I'm, as a scientist, very convinced that we are at a new era that will help supercharging science, which is the basis of all what we do in pharma, and the selling, the drugs that come out, the selling that we do or the selling or the drugs that we bring to HCPs and our patients, but it all really starts with the science. And I'm particularly excited about the opportunities that we see in the scientific space and beyond. Why is there so much a hype? A lot is happening already. So we did a little bit of digging, and I think people deep into the topic will have realized there is already 50 assets actually in drug development pipelines, and notably not primarily in the large, we're speaking about Novartis and Roche here, as other companies like Recursion, which have actually fueled the industry pipelines remarkably in a very short time frame. There is, we have seen success in previously unthought, undruggable targets, all of a sudden are druggable, and we find ways to sort of really generate new hypotheses and new ways of sort of disease intervention. We see a lot of discussion around trial simulation in order to improve protocols. Hyper-personalization of HCPs is a very big area that is in everybody's talking about. But also better capital allocation for manufacturing using these intelligent technologies. And also here we should think about 15, 20 years back, when at least I started to get a little bit more into the business. We had small molecules and then antibodies came. Today we have 15 different modalities, and I guess you all know this again much better than I do. But the demands actually on the supply chain, the demands on manufacturing, the flexibility that's required and the resilience that's required to, cost efficiently produce these very many different modalities in time is another very big need, or another very big question that the industry is dealing with. So we do think that looking at the list of things that's actually happening already, we are truly at the era of something new. And it addresses, some of the, you're all aware, some of the very fundamental issues that we have in pharma in particular. It's a super inefficient process. It takes 10 years, has a probability of success of 10-15%. We spend 2.5 to 4.5, depends on what therapeutic area. Look at US dollars to get a new molecular entity onto the market. So it's a super inefficient model. And we have also seen over the last years a slowdown in innovation, because I would say the easier science is done. And we see this, the big pharma companies going up until 2030 into a phase of very low growth, 2-3%, 2-4%, 2-4% growth. So there's some very fundamental issues in the industry that we think these intelligent technologies can help address. And on top of that, over the last years, which has heightened the problem, we have seen very high costs of capital with inflation and interest actually going up. So if I speak about, and we do this for all of our industries, when we talk about what these intelligent technologies can do, we literally think it's about the reinvention of the entire value chain. And what is required to capture the opportunity that's there, we think there are 5 strategic imperatives that companies need to focus on. One is sort of really understanding where the value is. And I'll go through all of these in a second. But, use cases jump too short. We need to really start to thinking through how do we get scale value from generative AI, and it requires different ways of working. It requires to think about talent in a very different way. We talk about responsible AI. I mean, I still remember when email wasn't there, when PCs weren't there. I still remember these like cute little boxes 20 years back. Nobody ever spoke about we need a responsibility framework around these groundbreaking technologies. GenAI is so powerful that we need responsible frameworks to contain and manage the risks that come along with it. And I'll just say a few words about that as well. Underlying all of this is what we call the digital core. I mean, think about the highway or the machinery room that enables, all of these use cases and the different ways of working along the entire value chain. And then lastly, and this is what we have seen pharma actually be behind, up until like 18 months or so back, what we call reinvention, like the continuous and fundamental investment in reinventing and doing things in a different way. Pharma has actually caught up. There's a certain index, how we classify actually our large clients. And pharma has actually been the industry that has stepped up the most over the last 18 months to really take approaches towards more fundamental reinvention. However, we do also think that companies need to build more of a muscle around continuous change, because it's not that you define where do I want to be tomorrow and you just have all the answers and you implement it. It's a very continuous way of understanding what's working, what's not working, where are the opportunities. Things are happening very fast. And pharma is not exactly an industry that's been dealing easily with risk, with failure, with experimentation, beyond the lab. And so that is a muscle that we think all of our clients, or all of the companies actually that are involved in leveraging these technologies will have to embrace. So we have done, and there's always a lot of, when we talk about value, there's always a lot of debate around is there truly money to be won? And we have built, and there is more time, and we can share this information and we can have follow-on conversations. But we have built a quite sophisticated model where we went into every part of the value chain and have modeled through what we think the actual impact of bringing these intelligent technologies to discovery, clinical, manufacturing, supply chain, commercialization, and then the back office, which we call enterprise function. And you see there is a significant uplift in efficiency. That is time, taking time out, because we're de-risking earlier in silico, not doing everything in a wet way. But there's acceleration, but there's also bringing more targeted actually drugs to the market that stay longer in the market. We all know with the exclusivity time frames, and big opportunities in the commercialization space to be more targeted, as well as take cost out of manufacturing. So it would take too long to go through all of this, but taking all of this together, and that's the bottom line. We do think there's a lot of potential and opportunity there for the entire industry to become more efficient. And this is built on, assumptions that we've made. And as, these approaches are maturing, we'll have to verify these. But just putting actually a bold statement out there, we do believe that we can actually increase speed to approval, by 30%. We do believe that we can lower costs of NMEs by 30%. We do believe that there is an associated value uplift actually in the drugs that hit the market, because they're more targeted, they have clearer and cleaner profiles. And, we understand the patient populations much better. And last but not least, so the value uplift is primarily because the drugs stay longer in the market. If you shorten the time it actually takes to bring them to the market. The last point here is a very rough assumption, but we hope that leveraging these intelligent technologies will not only be done to be faster and more cost efficient, it also opens up an opportunity to address diseases for underserved and underprivileged populations today. If we think about rare disease, for example, it's a huge opportunity there with a handful of patients in the world to get to better drugs in a more cost-efficient way. So that is another promise that we hope we'll see from applying these technologies. Now, this is again by far a too busy slide, but there is a lot of. The bottom line of the slide is the following. Today, what we see in many companies, there is a focus on individual use cases. You go in and you say, okay, how do I accelerate, target identification? How do I, use summarization skills in either my protocols or getting ready for submissions? What we think is important is you have to think much more in integrated value streams. These value streams are, how do we actually accelerate the time to clinic? looking at all of these components that are here and sort of thinking through where are the points of acceleration, but also the points of integration to truly get a much better end-to-end, build an end-to-end capability as opposed to a pointed, little solution to a very isolated problem. So if you take one thing away, we think generative AI, the beauty of generative AI is that it has the ability to connect what's today in silos into value streams that will fundamentally give the much better value uplift. And that is time to clinic. It's accelerating the time to the market. But it's also, we call it here, making medicines more accessible. That has to do with developing, the better drugs for the right patient populations with optimized protocols. So value streams, end-to-end capabilities, as opposed to use cases, is my message number one, what to focus on. I said before, in order to capture value from generative AI, we think that all of you and all of the pharma clients out there or pharma companies out there will have to work in a different way. Today we have, and I guess you're all very familiar with it, we have very siloized and very sequential processes in place. Generative AI actually offers the opportunity, and we've been dreaming about this in the industry for many, many years, to not actually force any given molecule into a fixed and inflexible process, but rather actually flex the process around what the individual asset needs. Generative AI will, along the entire, and here is only shown research and development, but in reality it goes further down. It will actually an opportunity to more seamlessly integrate these process steps, which will lead to a much earlier de-risking, which will lead to a lot of new insights when we bring, very upstream, even into target discovery and target validation, in-market insights into the process. The question is, how do people know how to operate these processes? So there's a big opportunity there, but we think companies need to start experimenting and thinking through how to sort of really flexibilize around processes in order to get to the benefits of these technologies. But there's also an impact on the talent. And I've shown here, or I've listed here, discovery research, very typical roles from a lead biologist, a protein scientist, data scientist, project managers. And we've just taken an N equals 100 here. So we do think that there is actually efficiency, an efficiency gain by applying these intelligent technologies. So we think this could probably be around 17 to 20%, give and take. But we do think there is some efficiency. But that's not the only thing. We do think that even very, very traditional roles, take a lead biologist role will still exist. But the competencies and the skills that a lead biologist actually needs to have in the future is expanded. You have to have a much broader disease understanding. So if you want these people to sort of integrate insights from further down the value chain, they actually need to have a broader understanding. So these roles will have to be able, from all the insights and the inputs that are coming in, manage that content. But then, of course, there's a whole data component side. So we do think, for example, biology data scientists, very specialized data scientists who understand what are the data sources out there, where do I find them, what are the partners, how do I actually integrate and make them interoperable, what makes sense in order to solve the problem that I'm trying to solve, is a new role that's likely going to exist. So again, the bottom line here is, yes, there's going to be efficiencies, but there's going to be changes in the way even very traditional roles will work. And there's going to be new roles that actually complement the traditional roles that have been here. And again, here, I would recommend to take a very explicit view at what is it actually that we need in terms of skills and in terms of additional roles. Why is some of that, and it's very obvious, why do these roles change? And I will just quickly focus on this one. I mean, today, again, if you look at sort of the biology, and it's an oversimplification, but we'll be moving from a wet lab-driven model into a data science and simulation-driven model. The wet work will not go away, but it will be more confirmatory. But the starting point is much more in silico and much more data-driven. And this is why even the traditional roles will have to change, and the skill sets will have to change. Here we see a set of skills. You can debate whether these are the right ones or not. And a lot of them, for biologists will still be very relevant also in the future. But there's other important skills. And I guess everybody or most people in the room are using pilots and agents and work with generative AI. And if you have actually put, into ChatGPT or any other model, a question and even use a different large language model or reformulate the question even on a very trivial question slightly, the output you get from the model can be very different. So how do you, on these very complex topics like identifying new targets, how do you prompt properly? It is a true skill, and it is something that, and again I come back to the biologist, it is something that people need to fundamentally learn on how to do this right. Responsible AI, we talked about it before. We really do think generative AI has huge potential, but also there need to be guardrails in order to make sure that it's being used, as the word said, in a very responsible way. From an Accenture and life sciences standpoint, we have developed actually a framework that defines at a very detailed level of the various risks along the value chain and how to actually mitigate these risks. But obviously for us in life sciences and pharma, data privacy is important, transparency is important, explainability is important, accuracy is important. We cannot afford in a clinical trial or in safety or anywhere else to be imprecise or actually trust models with an output that's unexplainable. That's just absolutely impossible. So having these precautions in place and having a very clear definition of how that translates into quality assurance processes, explainability processes, and when is actually an output of a model good enough to have a significant impact on an experiment, on a clinical trial, or on any submission decision for that matter. Again, very happy. I don't have the time right now, but we do think GenAI needs to be sort of responsibly managed with very explicit efforts. You will see up until now, and I know I've probably used most of the time already, I haven't even spoken about technology. So a lot of getting benefits from generative AI, as I said, really has to do with where's the value, how do we work differently, what are the processes, what are the talent implications, what are the day-to-day work implications. But of course, there is also an implication on the highway. So you need to have a foundation that enables the use of generative AI. And we would say there is three important components. One is actually your technology architecture as it relates to your digital platforms. I think I have a slide here exactly. Three very important components, the digital platform, the architecture that across the value chain sort of enables what you're trying to achieve. We need to have generative or AI-ready data in a way so that it's interoperable and is clean and can be used and can be trusted. And then, of course, we need the respective AI and the respective models to be applied. And again, here is a very quick snapshot of what we think, a state-of-the-art digital platform architecture could look like along the value chain. Happy to discuss. And the data aspect is a critical one. Today, or for us to get the full value, again, this is an R&D example, there is so many different data sources available, internal, external, but also artificial data, synthetic data that opens up a whole new world of how we think about trial designs, of how we think about trial conduct. So all of these very different data types that we need in life sciences or in pharma requires or brings the necessity to really think about generative AI, because some people say, why do you need generative AI? But we have a lot of different data sources, and we have a lot of unstructured data. And to get the benefit, this is actually where the opportunity lies from mining this data using generative AI. And then lastly, I said it before then I hand over to the panel, this point of continuous change and reinvention. It is a matter of mindset around being open to all the things that are happening, often at the periphery, because these new technologies move very quickly. I still remember we haven't heard about generative AI a year back when it started to sort of really come quite to the center of our attention. Now all of a sudden it's everywhere. So for continuous reinvention, organizations need to build an organizational capability of being able outside in and sensing, understanding what's happening in the market, creating an organizational readiness and mindset, an openness, a willingness to learn, a willingness to experiment, a willingness to very quickly kill things if it doesn't work, but also very effective and efficiently embrace what is working and sort of implementing on a continuous basis. So with that, I hope I have given our esteemed panelists a bit of a foundation for the panel discussion, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Petra, for laying the ground for the upcoming panel discussion. I think we've seen GenAI has the potential to actually impact and transform pharma across the whole value chain. And I'm really excited to have the conversation with the panelists today. Unfortunately, one of the panelists today has fallen sick, so we will not be able to count with Professor Michael Moore with us today. But you will deal with me on a stage, which I will try to do my very, very best to moderate the panel. I have incredible speakers alongside me, and I will appreciate even more than usually on open mics when you send your questions on Mentimeters and we make this session really lively and dynamic. So without more ado, please help me welcome Tomi Ilichev, Davidek Heron, and Nikita Popov. Please join me on the stage.
It's my good side.
Mine is here.
Then mine is here.
Good. So thank you all for joining me on the stage. I think we had a nice description of what GenAI can do, but before we dive into the topic, I'd love that the audience gets to know about you a little bit more and kind of one quick highlight on your take on GenAI. So maybe name, your role, what you do, and a very quick take on GenAI. Nikita, would you like to start?
Happy to start. My name is Nikita. I lead the AI strategy office at Novartis. I'm with the company around 6 years. And I would say I'm probably the best person at Novartis to know our whole journey and have a lot of lessons, I would say, learned from it. With GenAI, I'm very excited about this technology, but I think my maybe key word for this technology is to be pragmatic. So not look at it as a recipe to solve all the problems that you see around you, but really be pragmatic where you apply this technology, where you apply different technology, and where you have another solution than technology.
Thank you. Tomi.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Tommy. I am the data and AI lead for life sciences here in ASG. There are many familiar faces, and thank you very much for inviting me. What I think about GenAI is I've been in the AI game, so to call it, for now over 15 years. And it's pretty much the first time that, the average person comes to me to speak about AI. Usually rooms like this will be full with, or half full with, only tech people like myself. But I feel that this is really rapidly changing, that most of the CEOs from the top 20 pharma companies have AI very high on their agenda. And I think this also translates to the everyday employee now, which wasn't the case before. So I really look forward to hopefully having many people adopt it.
Davidek.
Sounds good. Last but not least, Davide Karen. I'm actually across the other side of the river representing Roche, but my thoughts are mine today, not Roche. It's a really exciting topic if you think about Gen AI, right? And the best thing I can say very simply is around how it's going to enable us to be better versions of ourselves as humans. So hopefully on this panel we can bring more of the human side behind it, because I think the lady before us really articulates some really good use cases. But around that is people, right? And if you don't have the right people or mindset or attitude around that or culture, it won't succeed. So that's the piece sometimes as leaders we often forget and jump straight into that piece. But yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining. And I'm just going to start elaborating on that, right? Because that touches a lot on my background. I come with a background of technology adoption in hospital settings. I'm not the typical pharma person that we find in this room. And I think you're right. So technology itself, just referring to Petra as well, technology as a standalone tool might not change, might not transform, might not have the outcomes that we all expect. So when you see the GenAI and AI, but GenAI into your organizations, and you see the human factor into it, where do you still think there are the bottlenecks? Where are the big, I don't know if it's on education, it's on team structure, it's where do you see still the culture and the human side of organizations needing to step up?
Happy to start discussion. I'm sure there will be different perspectives. I personally think, although being technologist, that technology is maximum 30% of success of the recipe. 70% will be on change management, on people, on upskilling. I think this is a very clear pattern that we've seen in our organization, and today we're doubling down actually on the component which is 70%. In general, if you would think of any, be it Gen AI solution, be it another technology or AI solution, I think it's actually for pharma company very easy to fail, because if you would think we are not native software development companies, so even when it comes to what might be doable for a technology company, it's not necessarily, I would say, piece of cake for us. So you can fail here clearly just with developing technology. Then we operate at absolutely fragmented and very complex data landscape, which actually adds complexity quite significantly. But then when it comes to the adoption, it's also very fragmented teams across the world. We're global companies, and we have quite frankly many priorities, right, which are competing priorities. And then making this point that generative AI or AI is something that you as a person, as an employee of Novartis or any pharma company need to pay attention and need to invest in your time is actually not as easy as we might think. I think everyone here, because you came to listen to this workshop, I think you believe in Gen AI, but do not translate this as being true for every single person that work in any corporation. And I think making this point that it's not only hype that we're seeing, it's also very tangible, and we should go about it as an organization is much harder than it might sound. I don't know if there are complementary perspectives.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll go next. So I think we also need to put a face to what Gen AI is within the specific areas of which we work in, because it can be everything and anything, right? And I think you articulate really nicely at Novartis how sometimes internally there's some barriers, right, and what that looks like. but almost sometimes you have to look externally as well. So one thing that really inspired me recently was there was a use case that we saw for a hospital system in actually Midwest, West Coast, where, as you know, in the summertime we had those massive heat waves in the US. And then there was an influx of patients coming into the emergency rooms from heat deprivation, which is really causing a clog in the system. So what they actually did was they actually leveraged GenAI, they call it the GenAI nurse, but to actually robocall all these potential patients within the specific geographies that they felt were at risk to make sure they did the right thing so they didn't end up in the hospital. That's a real life example of helping humans be better versions of themselves and actually getting a solution out of it, right? Now, if we come internally, like how can we potentially leverage use cases like that to help us? I believe they mentioned this in the earlier presentation. How can we make sure that when we're physically not in front of, let's say, our patients' ecosystems or customers in certain geographies, it feels like to them we are? And I think this is where GenAI can play a key role in specific buckets in and around that. Internally as well, if you want to go from an optimization perspective, I mean, there's many use cases around just, a big piece is around the content. Right? If you think about it, how long does it take sometimes our people in the field or countries just to find what they're looking for? Even ourselves as human beings, right? But now you're actually seeing the emergence of these use cases. Actually, it's not even use cases, it's ways of working now, where we actually can actually find things in the time we need it. We can reproduce things and personalize from a hyper perspective for our customer base, leveraging this type of technology. When in the past, that would have been really, not as easy, right? So to your point, Nikita, as well, like there's actually real life implications of us actually leveraging it. And lastly, because you guys know I could talk forever, there's a lot of research that's coming out there. Like if you look at the overall workforce, even outside of pharma, 30 to 40% of the hours that we do is going to be mitigated and obsolete because of this, right? These technologies. So how do we empower our people to start looking at that next level of things? Because one thing this is not going to do is replace people right away. We know that. But sometimes that fear is there, and that's back to my original comments. What's the human side and culture behind us really pushing this through within our country, our companies, but also externally as well?
We're trying to dive a bit deeper here. So we saw before, so the impact is across the whole value chain. We saw a lot on just going more towards kind of business goal oriented, right? Instead of specific actions or specific tasks. Do you see the change moving kind of unit by unit? You see this change more transforming fully entire functions into a totally new way of working? How do you see the trends coming and the future coming?
As I'm the one to start. I think it actually depends based on maturity of different functions and organizations. So in our example, I think we're thinking quite holistically about R&D piece, and we are doubling down our investments in this area, because it's quite clear it's absolutely core to our business. It's our heart. This is where we cannot afford, I would say, not embracing this new technology. And we are thinking, I would say, very transformative. But then as well, the organization itself is, both organizations, research and development, are ready for the challenge. Say from different perspectives, it's very different nature of business. Science in one side when it comes to research and development, it's more structured project management that I think they flourish as a core capability. And for these functions, we think quite transformative. And other functions, and sometimes what I appreciated being, I would say, a corporate citizen, sometimes functions, they just have different priorities at the moment, and one needs to recognize it and not to over push. So I think time requires to get the same, I would say, dynamic, same intention. Sometimes we start from select use cases, which I think are good to get this, I would say, first step, get inspiration, and then get certain organization prepared for, I would say, for the bigger picture thinking and bigger transformation, ideally.
Maybe I can echo this, what you're saying, what we also observe across, let's say, the life science clients that we work with, is certainly a trend moving towards what also Petra mentioned, like functional reinvention. And I think specifically in the R&D case, I think it's a very important one, right? Because there are so many things to improve, so many things to change. It's not that easy to move from a traditional, biology to AI-driven drug discovery and all the things that come with that. Yet, I think beyond R&D, we see a lot of corporate group functions who think along the same way. How can they reinvent procurement altogether? And it moves really beyond now, I would say, in the last couple of months, 6 months, from individual use cases, but rather to a full change of perspectives. So how can we as a procurement, how can we as IT, how can we decrease ticketing by 20%? How can we generate content for marketing completely, from using AI technologies? There are so many, I would say, buckets of use cases that companies are thinking about. And I feel that, R&D is super crucial, but for me, what's very exciting is that many other parts of the value chain are recognizing the importance of AI, and I would say also bottom up and not just top down, thinking of how can they change and how can they be, faster in what they want to do and smarter about it.
Yeah. There's a lot there. See, how can we unpack this? Where I've seen it fail is people running after the shiny tool use case, right? Let's do this, let's do that. Where we've seen it succeed is when the vision is very clear collectively for the group or the company, and this is the direction we need to go. Here's the potential headwinds we're looking at. If you look at a lot of portfolios over the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a little dip. And this is how you can mitigate that to make sure you're still winning on behalf of your patients, winning on behalf of your ecosystem, etc. But also with that, where was I going with this conversation? Human behavior in general, if you think about it, just actually question for those audience that's in the room, how many of you actually used some kind of LLM in the last week or so? Raise your hand. ChatGPT, majority of people. Now, how many of you have actually used it in an area where you feel you're the expert in that area? Okay, see? So there's a human behavior aspect around this as well. So whether you're a scientist in a lab or you're a rep in the field, right? Everyone is starting to get external forces on this is actually not too threatening, it's actually good for us. Now from a leadership perspective, from a company, if you're very clear on the vision and articulating where we're trying to drive to, and then empowering your teams and people within those spaces to be creative and come up with ways to do it faster, quicker, better on behalf of our patients, that's why I think we'll collectively win, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. So we touch again a lot of different use cases. So I think it's hard to narrow it down to what is the use case that it's gonna be the most impactful, not necessarily the one that we are gonna see first. We know sometimes these don't go. Like if you could take only one, what would be that use case that you could see that's where the biggest impact is gonna be inside of pharma companies?
Hard one.
It's loaded.
I mean, my brain wants to say AI drug discovery, but my heart is actually something much more simple, which is automation of documents. So, both I would say are very deep in my beliefs, where I think, okay, they will have a big impact. And as you mentioned, AI drug discovery, it's kind of just starting off, right, from a more corporate level. But simple things like automating regulatory documents, quality documents, tech documents. I mean, I'm sure many of you are writing these day by day, and having these automated will also unlock a lot of new time to do more important things than writing reports.
Can I build on that? Because if you look at it, the stats show every 73 days medical information doubles, right? So think of us as humans, there's only so much we consume, and this is where GenAI can actually be the extra layer of getting that structured, non-structured data to really make sure we're looking at the right things to make the best decisions. Now, whether that's in research and development, whether that's late-stage commercialization, right? I think that's where I think the powerful use cases is how humans interacting with it and actually use that data to make better decisions. But Nikita, what are your thoughts?
I would agree. I probably look at this from a bit different perspective, not from, I would say, the value of the case itself, because I mean this case generation document with GenAI, I'm sure every pharma company earlier or later will have it. It's quite obvious. I think I look at it from the perspective of competitive advantage. So where can I create competitive advantage with GenAI? And I don't think it's document generation. It's almost like it's tick mark that every pharma company needs to do. But then when it comes to leveraging proprietary data that we hold in these companies that we work for in drug discovery processes, I mean, it's easy to say drug discovery, right? There are multiple steps. I'm personally most excited about generative chemistry use case, maybe for the reasons that I'm very close to it, and then I'm seeing progress that we are making on a daily basis, and this progress is absolutely phenomenal. It's progress that scientists for years were trying to solve certain scientific challenges and they could not, and now with AI they can, and they can do it in the matter of some months. And there are some breakthroughs where people say, oh wow, that's to me is quite impressive.
That's a good case. When I listen to you, I see data as the golden egg, right? Whoever has the best data is going to have the best outcomes. But it's very often in discussions also treated as a data as a bottleneck, right? How do we get the data in the right format, outside of silos, actually the right quality, unbiased? Like, how do you see GenAI on data moving forward?
Maybe I can start with this one. I mean, data is definitely the most important part, but also the biggest bottleneck. I remember someone telling me some day ago, it's like you have an ocean of data, but you're also drowning at the same time. And I think that's really true. There are many ways to generate value, but when we actually go beyond a proof of concept phase where, you want to, try one algorithm to see if it's going to bring you certain improvement in generating better clinical protocols, as an example. If you want to actually productionalize this and do it for the whole company, that's a different beast. And that's exactly where we believe, with our kind of digital core, you need to attack it from all, like, bottoms up and top down at the same time. And what this means is you need to look holistically. If you want to, let's solve AI drug discovery, what are the hundreds of data sources that you need? Where are these? And how can you actually put them in a way together to, fuel the AI with the data that it needs? Because it's also, quite known, if you put bad data in, you will get also bad predictions. And I think working along these lines of selecting what are the biggest value buckets, and then going down, what data do I need for that? Which systems? And how do you create a data strategy that will bring this all together into life? It's never become more important than now. Because ultimately, many companies are failing not on doing the cool AI models part, but they are failing on the very simple things, being able to get the data that they need in a high quality way.
Anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, that's absolutely core topic. And the way I look at GenAI is actually from two perspectives. So one, using GenAI to help us organize our data. I think there are a lot of tools that really help do that. And we can embed some of the tools in our workflows to just, I would say, decrease number of resources which is required to get data in a good shape. I think that's one perspective, which is very clear. Another perspective, and now I'll say, sorry, hi Peter, Data 42. I think this is our program, and we invested for more than 5 years in cleaning, organizing our data. And I think 5 years back, it was a bit opportunistic investment, very visionary investment from our CEO, where, again, Peter knows I broke the record of coming to the team and saying, what's the use case? Because we were pretty much organizing data without having high certainty on how will this data actually lead us to the insight that we were planning to see. Now with GenAI, we'll look at this data, which is really gold mine because we can mine it now with this technology. It's impressive that GenAI can democratize insights that people who do not necessarily data scientists can go to the platform and start asking questions in a human language and get answers back. This is very powerful. And what I appreciated as well in the pharma company, it's any company is the one where There is no way how one person will understand everything what happens across the organization. There are so many processes, and for good reasons they are there. There are so many people who on a daily basis trying to tackle certain questions. And if you can democratize certain capability and give them this capability and just let them go and do their job, then this is where miracle will happen. Another example with data will be something that we are working now jointly with Microsoft. We actually have another gold mine of historical documents from our experiments that we were conducting for tens and tens of years. And these documents, they are in pretty rough shape, to be honest. Sometimes it's a scan, which we store in PDF format. And then when you look at the numbers of these documents, and it's hundreds of thousands of these documents, and then whenever there is a question, which might come from regulatory authority, where they ask anything about, for example, safety signal that we currently experience in a clinical trial, the natural tendency would be for Novartis to come back and say, we probably have seen it somewhere similar, but how can we find it? It's there, but it's not accessible. There is no one person who knows about all these experiments. There is no even team who can do it quickly. So I know that we spent months of our time just trying to answer those questions. Now with GenAI solution that we built, we can do it in minutes. And this is really impressive, in my opinion.
I love it that we are starting to bring up for the audience like a specific use cases where it's already helping today. So it's, yes, we talk about the future, but the future started yesterday, right? We are part of it. We are part of it already. So we are building the use cases, and we have started to speak about democratizing data, we saw how many people from the audience is actually using GenAI, and very often a topic that arises is like the compliance, the safety, the ethical considerations. Like, how do you see that playing? We saw Petra mentioning and saying loudly, right, it's an important topic. We are in an industry where we can just not afford mistakes, right? That's our reality that we have to face. How do you see this whole landscape moving forward?
Let me go for you from a pharma perspective.
Yeah, happy to start. You guys can weigh in. So I think being responsible in the use of AI is a pretty new topic. It's not something that people would have thought of a few years ago, even though, as an example, AI drug discovery is also not new. I'm a bioinformatician. I've been doing this 10 years ago. What's the same methods, same AI technologies today. However, because the models are so powerful today, there are security risks, right? There are risks about leaking the data. There are risks about, which I think is even it's even worse, or probably, just as bad, which is to take the output of GenAI and just trust it, because it's not always the case that the GenAI will give you a output that you can trust 100% to use for a business decision. And I think that's where the kind of notion of responsible AI, where regulations and policies are being much, much more implemented compared to a couple of years ago. And I think also from the FDA's perspective, been working with them for quite a few years, there is a shift also that AI, there is a bigger acceptance of AI, because it's like no one can stop it. It's such a powerful tool. But now companies are starting to think about what are the right policies that we need to have in place, what are the right standard operating procedures to prevent that data goes out, to prevent that employees misinterpret the output of GenAI, to prevent to submit a clinical protocol or FDA regulative filing without being absolutely sure that the content is 100% in line, even though it's GenAI generated. So I think this will take probably a year or two because it's a quite complicated and complex field, both from a technology perspective, but also from a policy and legislative perspective. And yeah, we'll see. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so if any of you guys know me, I don't like politics whatsoever, but my company sent me to Washington, D.C. the other week, for a week, to sit with some of those members. And education is a big piece, and I love how you brought up policy, right? Because a lot of this does start at that level with local representatives and making sure certain communities are not being at a disadvantage for this, right? And it's interesting how policy shapes a lot of this space, right? And then obviously as pharma companies, we need to make sure we adhere to the guidance and regulations, but also we input into that outside of just the education piece. But it was actually not a use case, but it's interesting even from a GenAI perspective how in the US in particular, they're trying to actually implement it in certain communities that potentially feel that they're at a disadvantage, right? To make sure they're almost at a level playing field, right? With the use of this technology. So it's so broad and fast, even outside of our life sciences sector, right? And it's gonna be powerful. But the thing is, how do you keep it somewhat under control? I don't think anyone has a solution to that yet, right? I mean, Musk talks about it all the time. So it's one of those things. Nikita, what are your thoughts?
Just a few things to build on. Tommy, fully agree with. I would say we need to be careful of exposing, I would say, GenAI outputs directly as they are. So in the company internally, we say that this technology, it's not autopilot, it's copilot with from Microsoft. I think it's very important distinction, and it needs to be clear for everyone that if you use GenAI tools, to help you do whatever, you are still the one who is responsible for the output. It's not the model. This explanation, it's not me, it's the model, is not good enough, right? That I think we need to be very clear about that. Second, I think technology is not at the level of maturity where you can directly expose output of this technology to stakeholders that we're dealing with in pharmaceutical business. That's another very important aspect that we're looking into.
I'm going to start taking some questions from the audience, both from the audience here in the room and some online. So I'll start with some online. So people in the room, when you have questions, I'll come by. Just you can also raise your hand. So I see some of the questions on. You mentioned a specific example with Microsoft, but a lot of the examples we see in GenAI actually come from startups that slowly becoming some scale-ups. And that to me, I have two questions here, just broadening it. One is more the discussion, build versus buy, where is the fine line? And the second is, what's gonna be the role of these startups? Like we always speak about this David against Goliath kind of, when you're a startup trying to navigate with the pharma. So I know it's two questions, so just get a bit of time.
I'll start with the first one, buy versus build. My informatics colleagues, if you're watching, I know you love me with this topic. That's a really interesting one, right? Because obviously you need to, when you look at externally, right, there's a lot of things out there you can easily partner with. But obviously, as you know, within our life sciences industry, we love to kind of build our own stuff sometimes. I think Nikita, you mentioned it before, right? There's certain businesses we're in and that we're not. We have to understand where our strengths are and where they're not. Because if you think about some of the investments in some of these items, look at a couple years down the road. I mean, just the maintenance alone is just almost unthinkable for our company. And I'll give you a real reason of where to partner potentially, right? So I had the opportunity the other week. I was with our colleagues in Genentech in San Francisco, but we also had a chance to stop by Dreamforce, which is like the largest AI customer experience thing in the world event. And actually, Jensen Young, the CEO of NVIDIA, with Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce, think about it. Customer experience and technology versus AI coming together in a partnership is insane, right? And what they talked about is, if you think about, I think someone mentioned it, one of the big opportunities is, like, if you look at our portfolios, how do we make sure our medicines are available even when our people aren't? And they actually have almost chatbots now that are indistinguishable from a human agent. That's now, and it's actually commercially scalable and ready by end of year. Like, stuff like that's available. So the question is internally, how much do you actually start building on your own versus how much do you partner, and you'll have that integrate into your current systems. So that's still a balance I think we need to have. You can't lean far one way or the other. So I think there has to be a healthy relationship there. But far too often, sometimes we like to build our own when we can just, like, you know what, that's there, and we can focus on strategically how to implement that at scale to drive the outcome we're trying to achieve, right? So there definitely is a balance, but there's many use cases and examples of when you actually should start thinking about that partnership at scale.
Nikita, you said before on the building the competitive advantage? A different take on build versus buy? What could be your take there?
My take actually is quite clear. If we can buy, I would definitely buy. The issue is that not always we can buy because there is nothing to buy, or we need to integrate with our proprietary system, which we understand no one will integrate but us. That's when we need to build. I think one quite big example from Novartis, what we bought recently, it's Microsoft Office Copilot. We're really one of the top clients for Microsoft for this technology. We're rolling this out across the whole organization, and it's very promising impact that we're seeing from this technology. And what's great about it, we can actually focus on 70% of change management, upskilling and adoption of this technology in the organization, opposed to focusing on building technology. And it also increases time to market quite significantly. Another perspective, when we are up for buying something, for me, building something, for me, it's not a static question of today. It's like, okay, so today I want to have something in the company. It does not exist. The question also is, will it exist tomorrow? Just appreciating how much time it will take us to build, to go through the processes of, okay, let's decide as an organization, let's select the right partner, let's start building, then we build something we need to adopt. It's quite significant timeline. So maybe someone who is a startup or I would say scale up will build it much faster during this time, and then I would choose to wait if I understand that this is capability that will be democratized in the industry. So we discussed document generation. So we are not building document generation capability internally. We're partnering with a company called EasyOp, who is building this technology and who already implemented it in quite a few pharma companies. That would be a good example of good decision, in my opinion.
Maybe if I add just one thing. So in my observation, a big shift is not just buy versus build, it's actually in the middle, hybrid. Because a lot of these product companies, especially in GenAI, they have the problem that they don't have access to the proprietary data, the gold, right? And for them to be able to make the LLM more Roche-like or Novartis-like, if I put it simple, it's really hard. And that's where I feel a combination of having big partners together with smaller partners is actually what can move the needle much quicker forward. Because some of the things are standard, integration to Riva, integration into databases such as Snowflake, connecting to the clinical trial data and so on. That's quite standard stuff, which product companies are at least not always experts in, and frankly also don't have enough people power to move the mountain, because it is a mountain, to put the product on a enterprise level scale. Microsoft Copilot is a whole different ballgame, right? It's a product that's like super standard worldwide, and there it's much easier and much bigger processes. But for GenAI, especially around the drug development side, I think one has to think very creatively on how to move the needle if, moving fast is important.
And just to build on that, I will say in regards to the build, right? If you look at our industry, and specifically I speak for Roche, right? We have some of the best data scientists, advanced analytics people capability in the world, right? So how do you unleash those individuals to really focus on those things we should build in-house that will be a win on behalf of our patients, right? And you see many examples of that, whether it's evolving the ways of marketing through GenAI studios, things like that. Like we have 1001 where it actually doesn't make sense to go external, right? How do you empower those people internally to build that up? Because if you think long term as well, it helps. Right, so that's a good thing I think pharma has done, is brought some of those capabilities in, but then how do you unleash them? How do you connect that ultimately to not this is a fun use case to work on, but this is an initiative or direction us as a company we need to hit. Here's some of the areas we need to accelerate and let them go.
So we covered the first part now. Large corporates versus startups. Where do you see, like, is it gonna be the Microsoft, the Salesforce, the Snowflakes? Is it gonna be the startups that are super dynamic in silico trials and using GenAI for patient recruitment in clinical trials? Is it going to be, where do we see these collaborations moving forward?
I guess the question is, where don't you see it?
Okay.
Right? If we're to be really honest, right? If you look at throughout the value chain, whether it's early research and development down to commercialization, late stage of our products, we need to continue to, again, know what we know, but what we don't know, partner, ultimately to win on behalf of our patients, because that's why we work in life sciences. Everything we do in certain disease areas is different between life and death, right? So wherever we feel we can have a competitive advantage on behalf of our patients, right? And you always say on that competitive advantage versus Novartis, but like on behalf of our patients, that's where I think those partnerships will lie. And you see a lot of the partnering happening in all different stages, right? But I guess the question is, where wouldn't you see it, potentially? But what, you have a view over around the industry. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel, as I kind of touched on before, I mean, startups, and I would call them product companies, not every startup is like 5 people, you know. We would consider startups also smaller companies such as 1,000 people. But the difficulty is not to develop the product. The difficulty is to create the product in a way that, you know, employees from Roche or Novartis or others can consume in a day-to-day effort or in a day-to-day working environment. And that's where I've seen many smaller companies struggle to make that transition because they don't have the required expertise in-house, or they are not well enough connected to the client to know all the ins and outs of the business, which is required to actually scale out that product. Like as an example, you mentioned document generation. I've seen this also, many startups, you know, going that phase. There are probably over 20 in that space that I know. And most of them are actually being used by all the big companies, but I wouldn't say there is one which is scaled enough to, you know, automate, I don't know, thousands of documents on a day-to-day basis. It's still kind of POC pilot area, and I think that's going to change very soon once these smaller companies, you know, join forces with bigger companies, whether it's a Microsoft, whether it's you know, someone like us, Accenture or Nvidia, doesn't matter, but where you bring the best from both worlds to then really move the mountain.
Nikita, if you want to build on that as well. So I think also startups is one thing, but what we're also seeing the emergence of more partnership with universities, right? So if you think about it, not to put a plug in, but October 14th, we're going to have a partnership with InCube, right? Which is like MIT, Oxford, ETH, Zurich, right? You bring in these grad students to really tackle a problem, because sometimes we go through our day-to-day stuff, we have blinders on, right? So obviously you need partner with startups, but I think there's even more of an emergence of how do we continue to get closer to the university talent to really help us tackle some of these big issues.
I mean, my answer shortly, I think there is place for both, for big corporations, for startups, and I think it depends on the area. When I think of drug discovery, it's probably about startups. It's about startups like isomorphic labs. Of course, this one is backed up by Google, but still, it grew from the very small team to where they are today and have a very promising future. I mean, OpenAI is yesterday's startup, right? Now I think they're raising money at evaluation of, what is that? I don't remember how many billion. Is it 150? Same with Anthropic, 50 billion valuation. So it all moves. I think it's companies that really have best talent, that understood what's the niche, but then also execute quite rigorously. Because I think there are a lot of smart people with a lot of great ideas, but only few companies actually to make it. You said 20 companies only in document generation. I mean, it's only 20 top, I would say, big pharma corporations. So each of the companies need to secure at least one client. Otherwise, I think it will be quite difficult to continue playing this game. So, but I think ecosystem is quite fragmented, and there is a place for both.
I'm going to try to take one question from the audience, if we have any.
Actually, there was a point that we are working for patients, that we are working for people, and the generative AI can bring more insight to the patient community. And there, just another use case will develop in more preventative medicine also, because there are many diseases
which you can solve differently if you have more information. What about this?
Diagnostics. So you're talking about improving diagnostics with AI
or patient education, right? So
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Not diagnosis or patient education, just prevention, early signs, understanding the patient group, understanding where to intervene, and not waiting for the use case that you pay for the treatment and medical, that you pay differently. And maybe this is actually a huge change in the value chain of pharma companies, looking for the whole group before they become patient.
Correct. So you mind me just tackle a little bit, right? So obviously partnering with patient associations is critical, right? And you're talking preventative. And I think that's when you talk about how do we win on behalf of the ecosystem. So how do you start working with these geographies around the world to understand what are those things we're trying to tackle, right? In order to ultimately get there, right? So preventative, definitely key, but it comes first with those partnerships, right? So as companies, I'm sure at Novartis as well, you have to make sure we're in the room with the patient partnerships. We have to make sure we're listening at the local affiliates, right? Understanding, being in those rooms during legislation and policies when that's being written. I don't think anyone has an answer, but I think to your point, that's the vision. Ultimately, specifically in certain disease areas, that just shouldn't be around anymore. But definitely, there needs to be continued more effort and push for that. Not sure what you guys.
It's also a bit challenge with data privacy. It's always a topic. I mean, we have had a couple of cases where we were trying to get data directly from the doctors, and it's not easy. It's not easy because there are so many laws in place for a good reason, right? So people like me from the tech area, we also need to be very creative. How can we make sure that privacy of any patient is protected by any cost, whilst also giving the benefit, of before he or she even becomes a patient, to ensure that it doesn't come to that. And I think that's a very tricky topic, which I think will become very relevant in the next couple of months and years to come.
I'll take one of we keep getting questions, I believe, from a mix of online and on-site. And I find this one quite insightful. So do you actually see big pharma joining forces to actually leverage and see the benefits of GenAI, or do you see it as a mere competitive advantage? Is there some in between?
I can start. I definitely see pharma joining forces, and we actually do join forces on some data collaborations with select pharma players. Because again, I think the moment you start thinking of GenAI and you think you have all the data in the world, you understand exactly next minute you don't. Regardless of how much data do you have, it still will not be enough. If you think what's the corpus of data being used to train large language model, it's pretty much the whole internet, right? And with current, plus the supercomputer that I think XAI is racing versus Microsoft, who can build the biggest one. So I think here, let's say, in select areas, we need to join forces, and we are doing this, quite frankly, because otherwise it's not possible to build certain models and get insights that we're looking for.
Great.
Good.
Maybe
A bit more of I don't know if there's a yes or no answer, but let's try. So there are more and more tech companies or AI first companies, biotechs coming up. Do you see them as the future of drug development and the future pharmas and biotechs? Where do you see those AI first companies coming in?
Maybe I can start, then you can add.
Sure.
I'd love to get your view. I think, we've heard today also a couple of company names, Recursion, there's in silico medicine, there are, I think, popping up everywhere now. It's very interesting because to me, what they're doing right is to actually, what many pharma companies don't do yet, what you mentioned, leveraging AI in its core. They are not a pharma company, they're probably to some degree a more like tech, but less biotech company, depending on who you look at. And if they are smart and if they do things well, and if they're also with a bit of luck, right? Pipeline is always also a bit of luck. They will produce candidates which at some point will be bought by the bigger ones. And that could be a switch for these companies to reinvest. Reinvest where? It's a tough question. Maybe at some point they will also become themselves smaller pharma players. You never know. But I feel that these, especially in the drug discovery field, there are very, very smart people who basically put on their mission, right, to use AI in the intersection of biology and medicine. And they are backed in many cases by many, many investors. So I am very hopeful that AI trials and AI-driven drug discovery will become more mainstream in the next couple of years. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think I'm seeing different models from, let's say, AI-first biotechs. Some of them have very clear ambition of becoming, let's say, a proper pharma company. They run their own pipelines, and they actually progress. We're tracking all this AI inspired or AI molecules and where they go. I think the whole industry is actually looking into that, hoping to see, okay, where is this first AI drug, which is finally touching patients. I think everyone is very excited. Some companies, I think from the day one, they're very clear. We want to partner with the ecosystem, with either bigger or smaller companies, and we want to enable certain capability that will transform existing capabilities in those companies. So I think both models exist, and both models are exciting because that's something that moves progress forward and moves innovation. That would be my perspective.
So we are getting very close to the finish time. So I'm gonna do two very, very quick questions. So the first one that came from the audience, like in very short, like for each of you, like the biggest challenge GenAI in pharma is?
Change management.
Change management, good.
Mindset.
Mindset.
I would say value.
Value, good. So technology is there. The 70% missing we were speaking before is what we need to get ready. And the very last one big thing you believe we are gonna see related to GenAI in pharma in 2025? What do you expect as the one thing that we are gonna be able to see next year, like coming very fast?
Who wants to go first?
I can start.
Don't quote me.
I'd say two things. One thing which I'm pretty sure will happen, and I think that's this whole agentic architecture around LLMs. This is very clear, is happening already today. Next year, I think it will flourish, and this will be yet another leap of what we are seeing with all those models. And what I don't think will happen, but what I'm personally really excited is when GenAI will go from not text to text, but from text to action. This is something that I'm really excited.
Maybe from my point of view, I would say that next year we're probably going to see the first companies having their own, true LLM model. I wouldn't say from ground up, but understanding the context of the company, understanding the data of the company, and having many, many, many employees benefit from that. So I would bet that next year we're going to see transformations of day-to-day working life for many parts of the organization, simply because they will have a very strong, I say in quotes, in-house model that they can use for the day-to-day.
Yeah, so I would have two things. One is around that almost, I think our workforce is going to become even more engaged and productive, right, with these almost personal assistants around them. But the second piece is around, I think there's going to be a way as soon as next year where globally we're going to be able to reach certain communities that we might not have been able to reach before for various reasons more effectively to make sure our patients get the medicines that they need at scale. So that's all about go-to-market model evolution, advancement.
So we are going to close, but Petra, can I ask you what could be the one thing you see in 2025 that we are going to see and is going to happen?
Actually, I don't think there is the one thing. I think it's progress on many fronts. And mastering that's going to be the challenge for everybody.
Thank you. And please, if you join us, because you also deserve this big round of applause. So thank you, everyone that join us on site and online. Let's wait a second. And we are approaching the very end. So Rahel and me are the only things standing between you and a glass of wine. So I promise we are going to be quick. But we have 2 events coming up very, very soon. We talked a lot today about AI-driven drug discovery, drug development. That's gonna be the next event that we are gonna have at the Switzerland Innovation Park main campus, so in Allschwil. So for those of you who haven't had the chance to visit the main campus in Allschwil, I can say it's really impressive, it's really worth. So for now, just save the date. If you are scared of missing out, you can scan the QR so you make sure you get the invitation as soon as registration's open, so you don't miss on that. And I'm here and I'm very excited to say and speak about the next event. It's our DayOne Stakeholder Forum. DayOne has been alive for a bit more than 5 years right now. We started as a very local initiative supporting local entrepreneurs here in Basel, and we have grown to actually 3 accelerator programs, scouting globally, getting over 300 applications yearly from startups, mainly in the field of data and AI in drug development, and we are entering a new phase. So 2025 is going to be a big year from DayOne, and a lot of the people here has been with us every quarter for the past 5 years in these open mics. So we are announcing our new strategy with a very curated panel of speakers on October 8th, next Tuesday, here at Novartis campus. And we would be excited to have some of you in the audience with us. We unfortunately cannot have all of you. We are gonna have a private gathering, but please, if someone wants to keep in touch with the future of DayOne, wants to be the first on getting to know our future and where we are going, you can approach me, send me an email, reach out. We will make sure we try to find few slots. We don't have many, but few slots that some of you can enjoy. And thank you for being part of us in the last 5 years. Really excited to have you on our NIP chapter as well. And
yes, that's my cue. So many of the startups that have been involved with DayOne or are now collaborating with DayOne are actually based on the Novartis campus at the Switzerland Innovation Park. Our site we operate, so big call if you're working for a startup, if you know a startup looking for a workspace, we do have the workspace. May that be a desk or an office, just get in touch with me and discuss further. And then I think this is it, also from my side. Big thank you to the round, Petra, Nikita, Tommy, and Davidek. Thank you very much for this insightful discussion. And now, and also to Novartis, of course, for sponsoring this amazing place and the apéro we now get to enjoy. So please join us for more discussions now.
And save the date for December 2nd.
The last one.
The next open mic here at Novartis campus. So thank you, everyone. Looking forward to see you during the apéro. Thank you.